Yes, this is John from All Points TV, and people who might be, regular followers of what's going on All Points TV will recognize Laura Feather. We'll show you doing Laura.
Oh, fine.
And Laura is like, if anybody, they should become friends of yours on Facebook, because you do post a lot of stuff. And
maybe they shouldn't, depending on their preferences.
Well, I think it's good to get people to talking, and I think you're doing a lot of stuff. I mean, and you're talking a lot about stuff, and you post stuff, your reactions to what our current president Donald Trump says and does, and that's primarily the focus of this. Plus, there's other things you brought up in our pre-interview talk, like we always do, that I thought was intriguing. I wasn't aware of, and I consider myself pretty well informed. So, and we're able to cover many topics. So, also, we encourage you, like that boilerplate that I put up at the beginning of the program. If you disagree with her or any of the other people we have, you have an option to post on our Facebook page, also on our YouTube page. You can make comments as well as contact us with the information. I'll have it up after we're done here today again, so you can prevail upon you to contact us if you want to maybe come in and do your own, give your side, give your tale, because that's what All Points is about, all points of view. Because I think about the best way of doing things. We're supposed to have freedom of press in this country. We have the Bill of Rights are highlighting the First Amendment, and it seems like that's been taking a back seat. But anyway, that's enough for my politicizing things right now. But anyway, we're going to discuss many of the topics, and what would you like to begin with today?
Oh, well, I'm actually in the process of finishing up a book. It should be available by the beginning of next week, if not sooner, and it's going to be called Weaponized People, Trump's Eurasian Army of Trolls. And so I'd like to discuss some of the topics in that book.
Now that's exactly, the Eurasian thing I didn't know much about. Eurasia, for people who know, it's like the, kind of like, it's kind of recognizing that there's connectability to Europe as well as to Asia. I mean, Russia is kind of years ago it used to be considered part of, in some people's eyes, you'd see that as Asian, parts of Russia especially.
Yeah, I think Russia's actually in both continents.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially when the Soviet Union expanded, the Soviet Union expanded way beyond Russia's borders. And I don't know how many ethnic groups and nationalities were included. Can you hold on some of these minutes? Sorry about that pause there, technical difficulty. But anyway, I didn't know about this. Like, there's a perception that Eurasia is actually become like a center of focus or center of power, right?
Okay.
Is that what you're saying? Or?
Right. Yeah. I'm sorry. Even though I'm going to be talking about geographical topics, my geography is weak. I don't know. I know the Soviet Union was in both continents, and actually, Russia may only be in one. But Eurasia. The Eurasianist movement is what I'm going to be talking about, and that's a movement to unite the countries of Europe and Asia on that landmass into the center of world power, with Russia as the dominant country. And there are a number of initiatives to do that, to unite this landmass by railroads and by shipping lines and nuclear power, other infrastructure projects to unite this landmass, which might seem kind of inoffensive, but basically it's a movement to centralize the power there. And the Eurasians have their own currency. It's called the Altan. It's backed by gold. It's on the gold standard, so it's a way of weakening the influence of the U.S. dollar, and so weakening U.S. power.
I know Putin has been accused of, that kind of jives or connects or dovetails with what I've heard, that Putin basically wants to, I guess he's been according to some sources, he's been on a massive buildup of the Orthodox churches throughout Russia.
Oh, really?
He's trying to reestablish, the identity of the Russian people was tied to the Tsar, and also their connection to the Orthodox Church was basically part and parcel of the, Tsar's power base was, his connection to the church, and
because under communism it was quite the opposite. So
right.
That's an interesting.
Yeah. But I also, my friend just today, I was talking to a guy who lives above the studio. He was talking to me, and he said he saw question was going on in North Korea, so he pulled it up, and he saw that there was a railroad. A railroad bridge or some kind of trade bridge or whatever between connecting North Korea to a part of what we consider the Soviet Union.
Right.
And he said he did. So even just now you talk about that, I just brought this information today, so I could see where your reaction or where you're coming from on that. I know a lot of people say that Muammar Gaddafi was killed because he wanted to break away from what they call the U.S. petrodollar.
Yeah, I read some article that said that too, so that I hadn't heard that before. But it's the same kind of principle that a way to get away from the influence of the United States is by getting away from the dollar, and that's what these countries are trying to do. And so it's a way to take control away from the West, and by the West and the globalists, the Eurasianists mean America. Like America is even though globalism is often portrayed as something that's like being imposed on us from foreign governments, basically the globalist movement is centered in America, and it's with cooperation from the other NATO countries and our allies, but it's basically the projection of United States power around the world. And you may not like that, and you may think we're, wasting our money in other countries. And I have some ideological problems with the globalist movement myself. I'm not big on, man-made global warming, and I'm pro-life. I don't like their, abortion efforts. So I hadn't been a huge globalist fan particularly, but globalists are the opposition to the Eurasianists. So it's sort of like the two-party system in the United States. I came in here before talking about why we needed to support Hillary Clinton against Donald Trump, and it's not, even if you don't like Hillary Clinton, I just saw Donald Trump as being so much worse and so much more evil, and so I guess it's sort of either one or the other. I don't see it being an option to say, well, I'll vote third party or I just won't vote, because you can do that, but by doing that, you're going to be helping either one or the other. You're not going to be helping some third-party entity. You're just going to be helping one of the two main players, and it's the same on the world stage. So, if you're not with the globalists, by default, you're with the Eurasianists, and I think these Eurasianists are very scary.
I voted for Ross Perot at least once, and I also voted for Bob Barr back in 2001, I think it was. So I actually am not above throwing my vote away. But the thing is, I recognize this now. I know you don't like Trump, but I can also say that those who do actually can see what happens, because essentially Donald Trump was a third-party candidate. His own party was never really behind him. The party he chose to run under. He had been a lifelong Democrat, and for some reason he opted. And then his father said, if you actually look at his history, he actually said some pretty negative things about people who were Republicans. He said if he was going to run, he would run as a Republican because those people would pretty much buy anything. So basically,
I think people have said that's a phony quote, or there hasn't been any substantiation of that quote, but it seems to, I kind of hope that quote's true, because I think it actually explains a lot of his actions. I had been a Republican. I'm not at the current time because of Trump, but I had been a Republican, and I was hoping the Republicans wouldn't get behind him because I didn't see him as a real Republican, and that quote is an example.
So the thing is, right now, it's like some people have, some people say that the Republican Party should change and become more like centralized and more centristic, and abandon the planks of, say, being anti-abortion. And so I think they need to do that uphill. When you shift gears, you're always going to lose people. And that's the reason why third-party candidates and other third-party parties exist, or other parties exist in other countries, is because it's even within those countries, it's awfully hard to. They're smaller in population, a lot of them, but then they certainly don't have the diversification of ethnicity, racial, and socioeconomic that we have here. So I think basically the two-party system we have here is looking at a serious, they're already seriously disconnected from a large portion of the voting bloc. For even what they're aiming at, they're still willing to gain this. They're willing to abandon that. The other thing. So it's awfully hard to keep all the balls in the air at the same time. It's like a juggling act, and I don't think anybody's capable of that.
Yeah, and I have voted for. Well, I voted for Ralph Nader in that infamous election where I guess the Democrats think that he gave he gave the election to Bush. And, but I really felt strongly for Ralph Nader. He was really inspiring to me. And, I guess if, third parties can keep people engaged and, caring about life in the world, I mean, that's a good thing. But I guess from a pragmatic point of view, they do actually shift things one way or the other, and they, at least if you have strong feelings about the two major political parties, if you don't care one way or the other, if they both seem equally bad to you, which they might to some people, I guess I don't see how that could be true, but a lot of people see them as being equally bad. If you don't care if the world is run, on the world stage, and if you don't care if the world is run by Russia or the United States, both are equally bad, then, by all means go with some third alternative. But I guess I see there being a very stark difference, and, as in this last election, I saw there being a very stark difference. And, I mean, I guess there wasn't any third-party candidate that was terribly inspiring to me, but nonetheless, if you care about who actually wins the election, not just the ideals, but if you care about the actual ramifications in the real world, then I think you have to back one or the other of the two parties. So.
That's the sad thing, because basically it does come down to, if you're a purist, it can basically come down to backing evil. Basically, they always say the lesser of two evils, but you're still voting for evil. I mean, it's like, it's awfully hard. I mean, I don't know if I'd want to encourage the development of third-party candidates. When I was in political science class, years ago over at Mott, we had a great teacher over there. He was because you couldn't tell his party affiliation, and I'm sure he had it, but he always used to say that he always told us the purpose of third-party candidates was to introduce our new ideas, and then basically the other two, the major ones in this country, would embrace them or move with them. And he gave the example. Socialism basically the Democrats embraced it and got the 40-hour work week, workman's compensation, and other stuff like that. That we considered most of us, who didn't have that information prior to that class, was assuming that was always part of the Democratic Party's platform. So I mean, he said that it serves the purposes of innovation. But let's get back to this Eurasian thing.
I'd forgotten when I started to go off on that tangent that I think you're associated with one of the third parties, so no offense, I'm sorry.
No. I'm not a libertarian, but I mean, it's like, I think the reason why I kind of gravitate towards the Libertarian Party is because it actually has very little input, a little power, and I'm certain there'll be people claiming to be libertarians getting elected and down the road acting just as unscrupulously as anybody else in the major parties. I'm a person that sees that corruptibility is inherent almost in the political process as well as individuals. So,
yeah, but everyone has elements of corruption.
Yeah, I'm serious. I mean, there's a lot of stuff when I have the studio here. I don't go off and say exactly what I want to say, because let's face it, you want people to feel comfortable, and as soon as they registers that you might not be agreeing with them on something, or they think that you're going to hesitate to allow them to say it, and that's not necessarily the case, but you want people to talk. And that's what I try to encourage, because there's a lot of, anybody knows me, I'm very vehement about my political beliefs in person. But you almost have to create the situation where there's a false self, that you're presenting, and that's not good, but it's almost a necessity, politically. So. But anyway, this Eurasian distinction between Europe and the Eurasian and the, I never heard too much about, I haven't heard anything about it until you kind of popped this on me, and I'd like to hear more about that. How did you come across that?
Well, actually, the way I came across it, you and I are Facebook friends. I think that's actually how we met. And I came to some of this information first, through, I had a Facebook friend of mine post a video of some very extreme racist and it was actually what I consider neo-Nazi, and I was just so offended that someone would post a neo-Nazi video on my, on my page, and I actually unfriended him, and but in a way I'm glad that he did it because it set me on this research direction, because I was so shocked that that these neo-Nazis were sort of openly portraying their viewpoints and in what looked like a popular way, and then I found out that this woman's name was Lana Lotkev. She sort of reminded me of Ann Coulter, even though Ann Coulter is by no means, I'm not saying she's a neo-Nazi, but she sort of had the same appearance of Ann Coulter, and she was sort of talking this kind of rambly way, but in a kind of hip way too. So it seemed like, as if she were sort of like a popular figure, and so I started, and she and her husband, Henrik Palmgren, they're Swedish. They have their own website, and they have some radio channel. They do interviews, and they're sort of the popular neo-Nazi figures over there. And I started reading some of their writings, and I came across something about the Eurasian land bridge, and I didn't really, I was looking at a lot of the things about it, like it was very Aryan, pro-Aryan, anti-Jewish, but this thing about the Eurasian land bridge, and then I started reading I guess some of the people that they were associated with. I started reading their writings, and the term, other sort of very racist writings, and this Eurasian land bridge came up again, so I decided to check it out, and that's how I came upon the Eurasianist movement. And there's apparently this land bridge that they would like to unite by all those means I was talking about. But in order to get people all centered on this Eurasianist movement, there's sort of appealing to all the most racist elements in these different countries. I guess sort of as a reaction to globalism, sort of. Well, we've seen the Brexit thing in England, but it's very anti-foreigner, but also just outright racist. Like, usually we typically think that racism has been pretty much eradicated, except if, maybe some people who do it in secret. But now people are openly, saying that each country there should be a white country, like white nationalism is very popular, and everyone else should go back to their own countries. And so anyway, the people who have those kinds of, it's called identitarian beliefs, what they say, they'd say, oh, we're not racist, we don't think we're better than other races, but we just think all the races should be separate, each race should have its own country. So people of that mindset are being united, the people who don't believe in multiculturalism, those people are being united under this Eurasianist umbrella, and it supposedly appeals to all these very nationalist-minded, freedom-loving people, and not all of them are racist. Some of the writings by the Eurasianists, I would look at it and actually say, oh, I agree with this or that. They don't all present it in a racist way. Some of them present it very, like, oh, we welcome everyone. But the movement wants a world government centered in Russia, with Russia as the national language. And it doesn't, it specifically says it's opposed to liberal democracy. I mean, liberal, I don't mean like liberal as a, like Democrat liberal, but like liberal in the classical liberal sense. So if it's not a liberal democracy, what is it? And it's actually, and the Eurasianist movement is also based on the writings of this guy Alexander Dugin, who is a Russian philosopher, who has been called evil by the National Review. So, like, it's not like conservatives would say, oh, this is a wonderful idea. I mean, they say he's evil, and it's actually kooky. And this guy Dugin is also an ideological guru of Richard Spencer, who is who coined the term alt-right. So Richard Spencer is sort of the father of the alt-right movement in this country, and he is a big fan of Richard Dugan, of Alexander Dugin in Russia, and Alexander Dugin is the father of this Eurasianist movement. So Eurasianism is connected in this country to the alt-right, and then by extension the alt-right is connected to Donald Trump. They gave us Donald Trump as our president.
So I just see that I can't see where I can actually connect. I don't know if I'm disagreeing, but I didn't see this. I don't see Donald Trump as actually in his lifetime representing this kind of hardcore alt-right mentality. I mean, I just don't see that. I mean, he's a business person, so even if he doesn't like individuals, he has to put on he's like a politician in the business sense. You have to be like a politician. You have to put on a false front. He did a lot of, he never really got criticized of being called a racist. He was always getting rewards from the NAACP. He had, considered on his Rolodex, I guess, he had people like Jesse Jackson and Sharpton and all these people he could, call up and talk to and stuff, and he donated money to the causes they were espousing at that time. So basically, he was a political player in a bit because of the businesses he was connected to. I can never say that I could see him as being this engaged alt-right, activist on the quiver. I can't see that. I can't. Maybe what he said kind of resonated with people who had things like that, thinking like that. But I think he's an opportunist at best. That's what I see him as, an opportunist. I just don't know if there's this overarching plan from him to be in this position like that.
Well, Steve Bannon, you may be familiar with, runs Breitbart News, and I think they're Breitbart News is very different from what it used to be. I was actually a big fan of Andrew Breitbart. I think he was a decent guy, and if there is any foul play involved with his death, of course that hasn't been proven. Probably most people would say it's been disproven. But I would, as opposed to suspecting his opponents on the left, I would suspect some of these alt-right characters. I would really look in that direction, because who took over Breitbart News is Steve Bannon. And Bannon was instrumental in Trump's election, and the way he did it, or at least part of the way he did it, was by activating these internet trolls. He had found out about these internet trolls. This was discussed in Joshua Green's book, The Devil's Bargain. I guess he had run up against them in some of his business dealings, but he found out how they could unite and be a very powerful force. These sort of internet gamers, people who spend all their time online, sort of just the internet is their world and their life. And so anyway, he came up against that. He found a way of uniting them as a troll army, sort of on behalf of Donald Trump. And that's a form of cyber warfare. And we keep hearing about Russia, engaging in cyber warfare on behalf of Donald Trump, and I think it's and then we have this Breitbart troll army, and there's another troll army also run by organized by the Daily Stormer. That's a neo-Nazi website. I think now it lost its domain, but it was a neo-Nazi website, and they had a troll army that engaged in relentless persecution of Hillary Clinton's staffers, and Hillary Clinton's computer was hacked, and Trump says it wasn't the Russians, but our intelligence agencies say it was the Russians. But anyway, there are these troll armies working for Trump, being organized by Steve Bannon, and we have Russia doing hacking. And I think it must be true that these two are overlapping, that Russian trolls and these Breitbart and Daily Stormer-centered trolls are either they're all of the same people or many of the same people. And it isn't all bots. We hear on the news that, some of them, that the Russian trolls are actually not even people. They're like computer configurations, that computer-generated comments and things like that. They're not real people, or else the trolls are paid by the Russian government. But it isn't only that. There are also people in this country who are brainwashed to be sort of part of this troll army. And my book actually discusses the way there's sort of a phony internet cults that have been generated to brainwash these people using certain memes or recurring images. The dominant one is, are you familiar with Pepe the Frog?
Yeah, vaguely. I think I've seen some postings of that, yeah.
Yeah, it was Pepe the Frog is sort of a cartoon frog, and started very innocently. Nothing wrong, nothing against the guy who created this character, but he was sort of co-opted by the alt-right. But this frog character is central in the internet harassment. But the Daily Stormer guy, admitted that he used these frogs in his harassment campaign against Hillary Clinton's staff people, and this frog shows up elsewhere promoting the alt-right causes. But anyway, there's this internet cult where they actually believe that this frog is connected to this Egyptian frog deity, Kek. I think the deity has other names like Keku, or there are other names that sound sort of like Kek, but they're not exactly Kek. But the reason they stick with the Kek is because that's also a computer term in some of their video games. This K-E-K word has come up, and they link that with this frog character. I guess it's this bizarre set of coincidences, but I don't think they're really coincidences. I think someone in a very organized way was trying to unite these internet trolls into one sort of troll army to support their causes and to work in a very single-minded way on behalf of Donald Trump and the alt-right. Because I don't think that it would happen automatically. I don't think that these, just lonely trolls sitting in their, sitting in their homes would all unite and become a, organized, cohesive internet army that you could marshal up to support your causes. So.
I have a hard time believing that. I think I have a hard time believing that that would be just trolls doing that. I mean, but on their own independently, I could see why somebody might think there was a orchestrated effort to do something like this. But also, it just seems like I bet you now. I guess a few months ago, I read something about Richard Dawkins, who wrote in his he created the term. He came up with the idea of meme. In the book Selfish Gene, and basically he says that's not what I meant by. But when you're talking about something that takes on probably a life without, it was originally intended by the original creators of the cartoon figures or something like that. That is almost more fitting to the term, the way he coined that term back then. I think it was 1971 when the book Selfish Gene came out. Of course, Richard Dawkins is known for being one of the most violent atheist and most flamboyant atheist out there. But anyway, he's a biologist, I believe, and that's where he came up with the Selfish Gene, the book, and then that was the meme was in that. Because I remember reading parts of that for a computer science seminar class. It was computer science and philosophy combined together. It was a full 100-level seminar course at U of M. And I remember reading back here about Richard Dawkins. This has got to be 25 years ago, 26 years ago now. But anyway, I guess he's rolling around saying, God, that's not what I meant. Or God, whatever. I can't say God because he's an atheist. But anyway, it's kind of weird. It's kind of odd that you're bringing this stuff up because I'm listening to it. I'm seeing some of the connections you're making, and it just goes with me. I've known you for about 5-6 years now, right?
Something like that.
Yeah. So I can see where you got a fertile mind. You can pull things in, and you see things, and you feel you have a kind of special filter, and you pull out certain things and you connect them together. And I think that's a sign of an active mind. And most people nowadays don't really engage in that. They do have more of it's kind of an identity-based politics, and I think everybody does that. So you were kind of alluding to that earlier, and you're part of the conversation.
I guess my personal politics doesn't fit all into this category or that category. Maybe at certain points in my life it did more, but right now it's sort of a combination. Like I said, I'm pro-life, and I tend not to believe in man-made global warming, although I'm somewhat of an environmentalist. I'd like us to preserve the, nature, and I'm an animal lover. But, but then I'm also for, LGBT rights, and I'm, on the liberal side of the spectrum in, some other ways. So, and right now I'm very liberal, on the liberal side in the sense of being very pro-globalist. That I know that's not a conservative position. And, it's not that I'm against nationalism inherently, and there are good things about nationalism. A lot of the great art in the world has been created by nationalists. A lot of the great composers, wrote wonderful symphonies and, wonderful pieces based on nationalist sentiments. And actually the reason, I think, one of the main reasons I'm on this anti-Eurasianist, pro-globalist kick is because I am an American nationalist. I think our country was founded on wonderful ideals. I think that the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of, I think our Constitution was, divinely inspired. And I know our country hasn't always been an example of our ideals. We've committed atrocities in other countries, and but I think that the American ideals are so wonderful that America really needs to be the dominant power in the world, and American allies and the alliances that we form. I think that it has to be American-centered because our ideals are so special, and that if we lose those, I think the world is lost. So.
Actually, I can see that I forget, somebody was in the studio one time, and I brought up the fact that Ayn Rand, the objectivist, and she's hated, if you remember, you mentioned the conservative magazine, National Review. They actually derided her and wrote her out of the conservative movement back in the 50s or 60s. But anyway, she said one thing I think was very observant is that the United States as a whole, if you look at the documents, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, for one thing, we provide for the Constitution the creation of the Postal Service. We also create on the onset, we have what we now call intellectual property rights. We value that from the onset because we had a creation of the Patent Office, which no other country in the planet, they have it.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think any other country from the onset. Because if you actually look at other countries, when they developed, it was kings and queens, and they hacked it out, and amongst all the kings and queens, and they were taken over, and they were taken over by this guy, and then there was oppression going on. Like if you look at the Magna Carta, there was like a Magna Carta, there was a lot of abuse going on, and the nobles, the other aristocrats, forced the king to say, "Oh, I'm not going to do this to you because I don't want to die." Or basically, and that basically was like piecemeal put together. It was done. This country is different because it started out with an idea of where we were heading. We went ahead, and the same guy who was in here said there were some leftists that he admired said the same thing about the United States. He had serious criticism about the United States. At least the United States tried to provide a means for this to take, could change, and addressing issues could take place. And I think that's the distinction that most other countries cannot claim. I mean, if you look at the history of, I really get weary of people saying, well, in Europe they don't do this. In Europe they don't have the death rate we do. And that's like, I'm sitting there saying, I'm 54. I grew up here in Australia. I knew people from both sides. I knew people who were German soldiers, Wehrmacht soldiers. I knew people who were soldiers, from the United States. I met up with Japanese people, and these people from Europe are so arrogantly saying America is so violent. And it works on this new generation because the Second World War is not really all that much except for maybe a role-playing game or a first-person shooter. Okay, it's like you look at it. During the Second World War's course, 32 million Europeans died, and you're going to try to tell me that shootings and everything in the United States outstrips that? BS. I'm calling that on BS. Another thing is too. Another thing with these people, these Europhiles, seem to have a tendency to forget we are European. Our ancestors were from Europe. And the stuff we brought over, the prejudices, the wages and stuff like that, the wars we engaged in, were largely done out of European interest, for European interest at that time. So they can't absolve themselves of that sin if there is any. That kind of piece ticks me off when I hear those people so arrogantly say America's so violent. It's like, are you kidding? You walk through Europe, it's like every place you stop is a cemetery.
Yeah, and it seems like right now, with the Eurasianists, it's not a left-wing or right-wing movement. I guess I'm talking more about the alt-right in my book because they're more, I think, see them as being more powerful under Donald Trump. But from the left-wing, people have been, running down the United States for years, and probably orchestrated by Moscow to some degree. There are legitimate criticisms of this country, but I think the organized attempt on both the right and the left to take down America, just to make it seem like there's nothing good about America. I mean, not just legitimate criticisms, but just that there's nothing good about it, and we need to take it down. That comes from both the left and the right, and it's part of this Eurasianist movement.
Well, I'm thinking here, I'm listening to talk, and I don't know if you know who a guy named Karl Hess was. Do you know him? Karl Hess. He wrote for National Review. His parents were people from other countries, in Germany. Obviously, last name Hess is a German name. I think his mom was from the South American country. And anyway, he originally started out on a conservative camp. He wrote for National Review in the 60s. He kind of went in the opposite direction, opposed to the war in Vietnam. He wrote for Ramparts magazine, which is a decidedly leftist publication. And he also, but the thing is, it's like basically I had his autobiography. I didn't read it, finish it totally, but it's interesting because he's a lot like you are basically the same thing. I'm very critical of the conservatives I grew up around. They're for the First Amendment as long as publications and stuff and going to church and you can go read your Bible, but they're opposed to pornography. And I believe the First Amendment covers all of that because it doesn't. It doesn't state exception of this. It just says free press, free assembly, and all this. It is behind you right there. Behind on that little image. But yeah, when you say that, they're like the
pornographic images behind you.
No. I took it down already. No. I was trying to inspire people to watch. Okay, but that's that sells. But it's like it's a Karl Hess was kind of an interesting character because he went both back. And it wasn't, I'm a conservative because I believe in preserving the Constitution and the Bill of Rights.
Yes, as I think everyone should.
And I think that's the best way because, that'll prevent a lot of hostility, a lot of murders going on because, let's face it allows for flexibility within a society. I don't believe it's a living document, but it gives a way of changing and allowing for change. But it itself it's stated clearly. It's a document. It's not like a legal document doesn't change because you want to interpret it different ways. Like, I don't feel like doing this way, so I can reinterpret it. No, it's stated, and it's broad enough to allow for a lot of changes, and it has in this country. It really has. But I think that I don't even know what the left-right paradigm means anymore. Years ago it used to mean those who sat on the right-hand side of the king in France, those are the right-hand people, and the other ones are gauche or left-handed. They're the ones that oppose it. Well, that's not accurate here. It is. I would look at it. I don't see a lot of people who call themselves liberals. When you look at what a lot of them are saying, are far from being liberal. They're actually almost converting on being tyrannical. So I don't see this liberalism as well. They don't have liberalism.
And also talk about this Eurasianist movement. Again, it's sort of neither right nor left, or it's. I guess the way it's often some of these movements are called far right because they're ultra nationalist, and maybe nationalism is associated with the right. But some of them, I would say, are actually. You could make a case that they're actually left-wing movements. Like, for one thing, some of these I would say they're fringe movements, except that they're not fringe anymore. They're gaining a lot of momentum. But some of them are neo-pagan, like they want to bring back the ancient Norse gods. There's I don't know if you've seen any of these programs on the History Channel about Adolf Hitler's occult beliefs or the Nazi Party being influenced by these very esoteric occult beliefs, Atlantis and the Thule Society and all that. But these people are into that. That has not died away. That is very much gaining a lot of popularity right now. And so this idea of being kind of they're sort of anti against the Judeo-Christian culture. So if you care anything about the Judeo-Christian culture, I think you have to really oppose this Eurasianism because it's a movement against that. And the other way that I was thinking that they're kind of you could make a case that they're actually far left is some of the most racist of the movements support abortion for the undesirable races. They don't want white women to get abortions, but anyone else who's not in their race, they're very happy to have them have abortions. So it's neither right nor left. It's just evil, as far as I'm concerned.
In some ways, I can agree with that. That's the summation. It's evil because I look at I've read the mythologies of a lot of other cultures, including the ones that my ancestors came from, Scandinavian and Hungarian and stuff. And I just okay, if you just want to disregard, if you want to totally take away the fact that some people, it's hard to ascertain if there's a God, and that's an impossibility. And it's those who want to believe are going to take any kind of evidence as support. Those who refuse probably are not going to take any kind of evidence or whatever as being satisfactory. But if you just look at the models that are set up, or just look at the archetypes, the gods and goddesses of other cultures, and the ancient Romans or ancient Greeks or whatever, a lot of them are capricious and arrogant and totally disregard, have no connection to humanity, don't care about humanity. If you look at the concept, the conception of God, even the Yahweh, Jehovah, or whatever you want to call him in the Judeo-Christianity, he might have been a vengeful God, but still cared about humanity. And the reason why he put commandments on people is so they can have a better life amongst each other. The first few commandments are connected to God and your relationship with God, and the rest are supposed to how you do with other people.
Yeah, I don't think that these, wanting to, being interested in the Norse gods or some of the gods of old is inherently evil. I mean, I think that, there are people who are probably into that kind of thing just, for whatever spiritual reason, but these groups are, at least recently, often associated with these racist national movements. It's a way of reclaiming the white race, and that's what I think is evil.
So I can agree with that's where I was going to go with this. Basically, you just got to look at the ideas have consequences.
Right.
And so, but then again, I don't want to go overboard on saying that, because then some people say, this group should not be heard from. I think a lot of times, but if you're trying to, like they're doing now in the press, they don't want to hear this group, they ban these kind of domains. Right. You should be able to have them out there, because then that way people can examine them, put criticism at them, they'll hold them accountable. But to pushing people to the point where they're not going to actually venture to say anything is stupid, because basically it creates like a powder keg scenario. You're going to have, not that I'm encouraging people to act on things, but at least you got to hear the ideas of why you might not find that they're totally abhorrent and you're right in opposing them, or you're going to find that they're not going to go anywhere. I mean, Gamaliel said in the New Testament, they're opposing as the new movement as Christianity was developing, and they're like stoning people and stuff. And one rabbi spoke up and he said, if this is a movement of God, it's going to go on. If this is a movement of men, I'm paraphrasing badly, but it's going to die off. And basically, ideas are not. Some ideas are stillborn, they're thought and they die immediately. Some they're going to run a course, but they're going to falter. And then there's others that have merit. The secular philosopher Hegel believed Christianity, which again is connected to Judaism, is the only rational religion because it was meant to be universalized. Now, if you look at the other gods of other cultures, what can you walk away from what their teachings or what their lives exemplified or that you can't? I don't see how you can bring that and say there's something admirable about some of these people, these mythological creatures we call gods or goddesses in other cultures. Something I wouldn't want. The God I was going to die or live under, I don't think I'd want to have those attributes.
Right.
Yeah.
I've always been fascinated by mythology, though. That's one of the reasons I was got interested in studying these sort of far-right cults, is I sort of found it kind of fascinating, this idea of resurrecting these ancient belief systems. That, that when I was a kid, I liked to study mythology, and and the whole New Age movement that's often thought of as a left-wing movement, but some of these far-right elements, like that woman I mentioned at the beginning, Lana Lotkoff, is a New Ager in this very racist, ethnocentric, nationalist right-wing kind of way. So, and then I guess you also mentioned how Putin is using the Orthodox churches, and that's a Christian movement, but he's using them to centralize his power. So, I guess any of these belief systems have, are sort of across the political, or geopolitical spectrum.
Because he's got these videos of him talking about his, he had been from a KGB agent or a director or something like that. I don't know his title. It would have been in Russian, obviously, but he's talking about his baptism and how he always wears a cross. Now he could just be using it as the true Machiavellian sense. You know, what the Machiavellian, he said to the prince, he said, it's not necessary for the sovereign to be pious, it's just necessary for the sovereign to be pious.
Oh, wonderful.
So, I mean, it could be just a situation like that. I mean, and it resonates because maybe there's a sector of people in Russia, maybe other parts of the former Soviet Union, that felt that with the communism was an outside force foisted upon them for all this time and repressed their natural instinct to have this, connection to the Orthodox Church. And there might be some people who genuinely think that. I don't know if Putin really feels a connection to Christianity. I mean, let's face it, he definitely is. I guess he's like a robber baron in his own country. He's got millions and millions of dollars.
He's not humble. I don't think he would exemplify, the Christian ideal of humility. So.
Well, see, the thing is, then again, I mean, I think Chesterton said, the amount of sinners in the Catholic, he was referencing the Catholic Church, doesn't mean it's invalid. It just means that they're truly in need of salvation, and that's more valid. So, it could go either way on that. You could turn that about back and forth, but I mean, and I certainly don't want to judge the individual. He might be a real pious individual, and I don't know. I mean, how much any of us are going to know him, just what we see on TV and let's face it, we don't speak his language. We're depending on people translating. They might be doing it.
You don't speak his language?
No, I don't speak Russian.
You speak Aramaic?
No, actually, I learned a little bit of it. I don't speak. I learned enough of this. I can actually look at a word and say, oh, I think that's the same word. Oh, yeah, it is. Okay, but it's called parsing, by the way. But it's like I just think that we're basically dependent on other people's, translations or what they put out there. We don't know how accurate it really is. And that goes back to the idea of, what they call the false news syndrome that everybody's discussing, including Trump. I mean, basically, we have so many ways of getting news, but now we don't know if it's valid. But then again, did we ever know if it was valid? Yeah. So, I mean, now, what's the name of your book, by the way?
So, Weaponized People, Trump's Eurasian Army of Trolls.
Okay, now it's like, now you had like 8 books out now, different topics.
Count, yes.
Yeah. Well, I think one time we had images of all of them during one interview, and we had quite a few out there. Now this one's going to be also available through Amazon?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so now I think you're doing like, Isaac Asimov, he actually wrote a book on about every subject. Literally, he did.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you noticed, he actually wrote a guide with the Bible. He wrote, astronomy. He wrote books on basic science.
I saw him speak years and years ago. I guess. He's a pretty amazing guy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the true wealth. I mean, the true breadth of his, output, literary output. I mean, but he was immense. I mean, I had a chance one time to name drop here, Mortimer Adler. He used to be the editor for Britannica, I think it was, and he was speaking at Mott Community College, and I was working the audiovisual technologies thing, so that's where they got to pull to the videographers. And for some reason, I couldn't do it. Somebody else had to do it, and now I regret not being there because he was like, I read more about him and his books and stuff like that. It'd been kind of cool to actually been there, because I actually did see Eleanor Schmier one time, recorded her. She was president of NOW. And not that I agree with the ambitions of NOW wholesalely, but I mean, it was just interesting to be that degree of separation and, be able to actually hear her speak. And also I met the first black female astronaut. I can't remember her name. I think Jennings. I think it was Jennings.
Okay.
Yeah, but she was at U of M speaking one time. So, but it's like but you're going to be you're the harp player. You're the author. You're kind of basically a Renaissance person.
Oh, well, thank you.
I mean, that's like, and also you're all over the place in politics, because I mean, I think it's motivated from knowing you for so long that, for the few years I do know, but I think that basically you're always trying to do what you consider to be moral, and you always want to be connected to the moral cause that what you consider to be moral.
Thank you, yes.
So, I mean, I disagree. So I don't have the rancor towards Trump. I have distrust for him. I mean, there's business practices like, he's like all gleeful when they can, get a developer, use eminent domain to give a developer property at a song so they can develop and take them away from people who lived there for years and not pay them fair compensation. I really have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that kind of stuff. But I don't have this. I mean, I don't think there's been a president since I've been cognizant that I've actually agreed with more than 20% of what they've done. I mean, Reagan was a likable guy, but he did some bad things. I mean, I think he should have been the Iran-Contra affair. I think he should have been tried for treason.
I think I'm a rebel in a lot of ways. I tend to, whoever's in power, I tend not to like them. I guess I sort of during the Monica Lewinsky thing, I somehow got very much behind Bill Clinton. Maybe I shouldn't have, but at that time I did. But in general, I tend to be kind of anti-authoritarian. So, like, and Obama was in power, I saw him as a repressive figure, and Donald Trump's in power, and I think he's infinitely worse. But I guess it's sort of easier. It's kind of easy to side with the underdog against authority figures. So.
I think that's another is too. Just there's the personal. There's personal things. There's a little bit of biography that I had here that came out back in the '80s about Donald Trump. Jerome Tussell wrote it, and actually the last page of the book, before you get into the the photo credits and all that stuff that were in the book, he talks about he predicts that Donald Trump will run for president. And he pretty much predicted it would be a success. And this was done in 1987. So,
the Russians were helping him back then, too, huh?
So, the Russian connection, I just think that, the thing is, I like to really, if it's true that, did Hillary really have a hand in selling the reserves for uranium to the Russians, and then nobody wants to bring that up, and her supporters don't, and if that happened, that's all. I would say that's serious. That's not just like giving a recipe away, that's not your grandma's favorite cake recipe.
Similar that she didn't actually have the authority to do that, so she couldn't have done it, but it's, all the details.
But in our current political system, just because they're not supposed to, does that mean they're going to put, that's going to stop them? No, it hasn't. We've had how many, wiretaps and everything else, and spying on their opponents and stuff like that. Just because you're not supposed to doesn't mean these politicians are not going to engage in that. So we've allowed it too, because we keep it. That's permissible because we kind of like that person. We want to give a nod of the wink, but if you look at the real law, it is a violation. So I like to have everybody held consistently accountable for their actions. And I like that people I grew up around where they did some bad stuff. They went to prison, and I can't sit there and berate it.
Right.
They did the bad things, So
yeah, I don't like it when it's if your side does it, you cheer, and if the other side does it, you're against it. Just reflexively, because that's something that always bothered me in sports. It always seemed like if your team cheats or if the referee makes a bad call in your team's favor, you should be against it. But that's not the way sports works. But hopefully, in politics it would work that way anyway. So
yeah, there should be. It's called the rule of law, and I think both sides are basically law are lethal when they can get away with that. Get away from actually have to be held accountable, and that's what I like to see more transparency. I think that's just a buzzword of politicians for a while now. I don't think anybody's doing it. I don't think Obama did. I don't think Hillary did. I don't think the Bushes certainly never did. Because come on, the old man was a director of the CIA. They didn't know how to cover their stuff up. They're like cats. They go into the box and they cover it very well. Well, we know it's in the box, but we don't want to dig through the rest of the stuff. That's where they are. They're dirty. Politicians are dirty.
How do you get into a position of extreme power? Just someone who doesn't have all kinds of unseemly connections wouldn't be able to get up there. I think you have to be. You have to have some degree of corruption to get into a position of extreme power.
Well, except for Truman. Except the only exception I can see, I don't like the individual for some things he did because I'm critical. But I hear that's Truman. Okay. He was the second, third vice president that FDR had. FDR really didn't like him because he wasn't of his social set. He didn't keep him in the loop about the Manhattan Project and other things, and it was just he had to be told about it upon the death of FDR. But Truman basically was a decent individual in many ways. Some people say he was connected to the Klan, the KKK, but he was a Democrat, so we can forget that, But anyway, it just seems like he was just an average person. He was a failed haberdasher. He had failed in business a couple of times, ran for politics, got into it, and just by happenstance, being vice president and this legendary figure FDR, I have issues with him. He passes away, and now Truman's in power. Now, it was just basically about the shuffling of cards. And let's face it, he probably had something he probably had stuff to cover up. He probably had political favors, but also people wanted to see him in higher positions, so they weren't allowed to come to light. So I don't know, but if you just want to look at it on the surface, he seemed to be the only person who was a normal individual that actually got to the highest office.
I think so, and I shouldn't be overly cynical. I'm trying to motivate people here to get behind the good things about globalism, but I guess there's the idealism and then there's the reality. So
the elements are Anyway, the book again. The title of the book is.
I'm sorry. Weaponized People, Trump's Eurasian Army of Trolls.
And how soon will it be available on Amazon?
It should be available by Monday of, what Monday's date? Whatever the whole
So about the
Monday is.
2nd, 3rd of September?
Yeah, if not sooner.
Okay, and as always, it's always good to have you in here, and I'd like to see this develop more. I mean, if you find out more things about a proposition of globalism, or if you think it's generally something you really want to push for, I'd like to hear that too. So, keep me in the loop, okay?
Will do.
Thanks again for making your appearance here.
Thank you.